Welcome back to Adobe Lightroom to Adobe Photoshop. So in the last video, we took a look in the develop module on how to make what we call global selections. So global selection affects the whole image. Well, the issue in photography is most adjustments that you're going to make are what's called selective adjustments. So today we're going to take a look at masking inside of Adobe Lightroom Classic. Now, we're not going to cover every option inside of masking today. What we're going to take a look at is how to do it in what is a mask. Because the trick with the process is understanding what the mask is doing. And until you understand how a mask works, you're going to struggle with Lightroom Classic, Photoshop, any of the programs, because they all use the concept of masking inside of the programs. So this is something that you really need to understand. And it usually takes somebody about a week or two to get the process until they become somewhat fluid with it. Today, we're going to go inside of Adobe Lightroom Classic and take a look at selective adjustments using masking inside of the program. Welcome back to Adobe Lightroom Classic. And last time we were taking a look at how to make a global adjustment inside of this basic panel that we have over here on the right-hand side of the program. So in photography, what you'll learn is that most adjustments or refined adjustments tend to be what we call selective adjustments. And so to make a selective adjustment inside of Lightroom Classic, so what we're going to use inside of Lightroom to make selective adjustments is this little masking icon up here. And so the way this works is you're simply going to click that and up pops this new window over here and it says add new mask. And we have the options of subject, sky, background, landscape, objects, brush, linear gradient, radial gradient. Range involves luminance range and color range. And down here we have people. Today we're just going to take a look at these beginning ones up here. So understanding this process, which involves what we call mask, is really a key element that you need to understand to kind of further yourself when working in any of the Adobe products, whether that be Lightroom or Photoshop. They all are generally using masks in some way or some form. And so as you're building more complex images, it's something that you kind of have to get before you can kind of move on. So up here we have the option to select by subject, and select subject, sky, and background are all using artificial intelligence. So they're using AI to make that selection. And let me tell you, the AI selections are a whole lot better than they used to be with the non-AI selection. So we're going to go ahead and hit subject and see how well it does. You might have some trouble here not understanding what's going on. And you can see, yeah, it did an okay job. It kind of picked the leg up a little bit. So what we have here, and I've got this thing up here, it says show overlay. And if I turn that off, it goes back to the image. If you were doing this for the first time, your image is going to look like this. All right. So you'll notice we've got red and nothing out here. The red is signifying the selected area. All right. Where it's not red, it is signifying that that isn't selected. If you don't like the color red, you can simply come up here, click this, pick any color that you want, and you're going to be good to go. We also have a whole bunch of different ways to show a selection inside of Lightroom because Adobe loves to have multiple ways to do the same thing. Up here, we've got those three dots. If you click on this, you can pick any of these different options. I'm actually going to choose white on black. And the reason I'm going to choose white on black is because it's going to help you understand what a mask is doing. Though this is a preview, the mask is right here, all right? And it's reflecting exactly what we see. And a mask does this. So if you have white in a mask, it's going to reveal or show your adjustment. So if I come up here and I make this really bright, notice it's showing this adjustment, which is insane, right here on this image. Let's dial that back a little bit, but we're going to keep it bright so we can see where that's happening. Click this little box that says show overlay. So where it was white, it showed it. Where it's black, it doesn't show it. So nothing happened here, everything happened there. Why? Because white shows, black hides. When you're working in masking, the way it differentiates between where it should and shouldn't make the adjustment has to do with white or black. So if it's white, it's going to do 100% of this adjustment. If it's going to black and it's pure black, it's going to do 0 of the adjustment. So right here, you can see it's got sort of a gray here. So what grays do is they do a partial adjustment. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to come and I'm going to say subtract. So actually we'll do an add. So I'm going to hit add and I'm going to come down here to where it says brush. Notice the quick key right here is Option K if you want to do this. And I'm going to go ahead and select that. And that's going to allow us to add to the selection using the brush. So to control the brush, we can simply use the scroll wheel on a mouse, or you can come over here where it says size, feather, flow, and density. Notice that my flow and density are at 100%. My feather's about in the middle where I like it. And I usually control the size with just the little scroll wheel, but you could easily come over here and slide the slider. You can also use the right and left bracket keys on a computer to make them bigger or smaller. We've got this image here. I'm going to take the density and put it at about 50%. And so what this is going to give me is 50% gray. So when I come here and I make this 50% gray, this adjustment, which is plus 2.50 on the exposure, it's going to do it 100% here and at 50% there. So it'd be similar to like 1.25%, okay, in brightness. So that area is not going to be brightened as much as this area. So you can control your grays to control how much of an area you wanted to do this. So if you had like 4 dogs and you needed to brighten up one more than others, the flow or density is going to allow you to control that. The way a mask works is white reveals or shows and black hides. Grays also work, but they work at a percentage of how much they're going to reveal depending on the amount of the gray. So since this is 50%, you'll notice that we have a density of 50%. So density is, notice if I come here and I do this and I just keep going over it and over it, it doesn't change. It's always 50% gray. I'm going to hit Command Z. That's going to undo the last step that we did. And I'm going to take the density and move it back up to 100. I'm going to make the flow 50%. And so if I do this, it's going to give us the same thing. But watch what happens if I go back over it. It makes it a little brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter. Each time that you brush over the same area, it lets you build it up. Usually when I do flow, I start off at a much lower amount so I can build it up slower than what we saw right there. We've got size, feather, flow, and density. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to hit Command Z a whole bunch of times so we can get rid of everything that we just did. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit subtract and I'm going to use the brush again. And what I'm going to do is just paint this out. So I want to make sure that flow is all the way up, and because we don't want to do or affect that area. So the last thing that we have here is feather, okay? And so I'm going to hit add. So we're going to go add, brush, right? So this is going to make it white. And I'm going to take my feather all the way up. And so if you look at this, don't look at the blue. What you're looking at is the inner white circle and the outer white circle, all right? The blue is just my pointer that I use for people to be able to follow. So the way this works is if we're over here doing plus 3.91 on the exposure, it's going to do it 100% on that inner circle, but it's going to feather it out to the outer circle until it gets to 0. So I'll go ahead and just do one little swipe here, go. So you can see it's kind of bright here and then it softens it out till it gets to that edge. We're going to take the same thing and I'm going to take the feather, I'm going to move it the other way. And now you'll notice there's only one circle. So when I go, it gives us a hard edge. So that feather is gradating out to the edge. So how would this work? Let's go ahead and reset this. So we're going to come here and just hit delete all masks. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, instead of making the selection with the subject, I'm just going to go ahead and use the brush. I'm going to pick the brush. And right now we're at using the mask. Oops. Go ahead and hit Command Z. So this is a great example of why you want to switch this stuff sometimes. When you do that, you can't see what you're doing. Let me show you what happened. So I'm going to click brush again. And the view mode that we had was that kind of white on black. So we're going to do the color overlay. And this is going to allow me to see what I'm doing because it's showing the overlay. So I'm going to come here and I'm just going to brush this in. And when you brush stuff in, you actually don't have to be like super exact, but I'm going to make a large adjustment again so you can see what happens. Well, I guess maybe make this dark. So you can see I made it, and what it does is it gives it a hard edge. So even if you do it a little bit, a lot of times you can kind of see where it is. Notice it's kind of like spilling over right here on that edge. That's because we have this hard edge on this image. So let's go ahead and hit Command Z to go back a couple times and undo what we did. We're going to hit brush. I'm going to move the feather up halfway. I actually don't like 100%. I think it's actually way too much. And so we're going to do the same exact thing, except for here you can see we're getting a feathered edge. And so when you do a feathered edge, it helps you blend in. It makes it difficult to tell where the start and stop points were because it's feathering it out to 0% on the edge. Usually when I'm using the brush, I use a feather of about 50%. And I'll just use a big or a small brush depending on how big of the area is. So if I wanted to come in here and brush this area, I would use a big brush, but if I had to get into a smaller area, I just reduce that brush size and come in here and add that little section there. So we're going to come up here. We're going to go ahead and get rid of that again. So I'm going to hit delete all mask and we're going to start over. So we're going to hit that subject, all right, and it picked up that little area. So we're going to hit subtract. We're going to use the brush just because that's the easiest thing in the world to use. We're going to come in here and we're going to take that out of that area because I don't want that to happen. Now, what that's going to allow me to do is adjust my image, all right? Now, if I don't want to see the mask, I can uncheck this, but when you start to adjust, it automatically gets rid of the mask, and then when you let go, notice it doesn't exist, and to get it to reappear, you would just click it. In this case, I don't want it. If you remembered in the first video, I told you that I like to tone flat, and what that allows me to do is, if you look at the dog right here, this is really black, really black, really black, really black, all right? There's not a lot of tonal value in that image. And it's gonna print and make the dog look like it's flat, a two-dimensional object. So what I'm gonna be doing is opening up the shadows, essentially just brightening the shadows to make them brighter, but not really affecting the midtones and the highlights. So I'm gonna come in here, I'm gonna lower that contrast some, and I'm just going to open my shadows. And you can see now that we're starting to get detail that didn't exist. Now you're not going to get a lot of detail here because it's somewhat out of focus because I'm shooting with the shallow depth of field. There's not going to be any detail where there would never be any detail, but we are opening that area up so we can see it. And so if we want to see kind of a before and after, there is a little eyeball up here. You can see that little eyeball. If I click and hold that, that was before. And that was after I made this adjustment. If we want to make another adjustment, and in this case, we could come up here and hit create mask and it lets us select, but I'm not going to use that. What I'm going to do is select the opposite. So I'm going to come up here to where the mask one is selected. And if I click this, I have two options. I can invert the mask. So anywhere there's white in the mask here, it would make it black. And anywhere there was black, it would make it white. I don't want that. I want to duplicate and invert the mask. So when we click on this, you'll see here's the new mask. It's the opposite of what we had. Now I'm going to lower that contrast, lower the highlights, so we make the highlights right here just a little bit darker inside of our image. I'm using the mask or a selective adjustment to, in this case, just control kind of exposure, highlights, shadows, whites, blacks. We have the ability to do some basic color adjustments and some other items right here. Hey, if you're looking for something new to wear, I have a company called T-Lab Designs where I design custom t-shirts and apparel. We make stuff for adults and children. So we're going to come down here this time and we're just going to use this reset. We're going to reset everything and I'm going to go back to the beginning. So these little lines right here is the way to get back to the global adjustments. So let's go ahead and start from the beginning. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and grab the masking icon. We're going to go ahead and select that. In this case, I'm going to select the background. So we do it just a little bit different. I'm going to hit select background and it's going to do a pretty good job. Remember, if you want to check what it's done or alter or adjust it, that's not a big problem. You can come into your mask and see it. If you want to look at your mask, the easiest way is just to go to see white on black. You can tell right there, yeah, it's got a little bit, but we're not going to worry about that too much right now. So I'm going to go back to color overlay, and I'm going to take my contrast and lower it. And essentially I want to get this area a little bit darker. What I want to show you is, so one of the tricks in photography is now we understand and we know how to adjust it, but what do we want to adjust it to? So how do I know if this is too bright or too dark? And most people aren't going to have calibrated monitors like I do, but even with myself, I have calibrated monitors, but I do use and look at numbers inside to kind of give myself an idea of where I need to be. When I'm hovering over this spot, what I want you to do is look up here. Right now, you're not seeing it, but you're going to see red, green, blue. And when we hover over that, we're at essentially 95.7%. Okay. And if we look at that, think of it as in whites or grays or darkness. If we round that down and just say that we're at 95% as far as the brightness of the image, if I want to hold a highlight detail, I usually don't want to go below 2%. So we should be good. So this is a white that we're going to be able to hold. I moved up a little bit to see how it is. And that's allowing me to kind of get an idea of how much I want to bring this down. So I can come back over and read it, and that looks pretty good. We do the same thing in the blacks. So if I come in here to blacks and I look up there, we're at about 1.5 as an average. And normally in the blackest black area that you have, you want to be around 97%. So it's still a little bit dark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I would normally adjust it. But in this case, I don't want to adjust the darkness out here. I just want to adjust the darkness here. So we already have the mask, and now I want to select the dog. So that's really easy. We can go into this mask. We don't need to create a new mask, but we could. I could easily come up here and just go create, select subject, and it's going to do the exact same thing that I'm about to do. So I'm just going to hit here and go to duplicate and invert. And now we've selected the opposite. And this is where I'm going to come back in and I'm going to kind of open that area up so I can see those highlights. And you can see up here, we're at about 3%, and I'm trying to get 97% as far as the darkness. And the reason that I'm flipping the numbers is, and you'll see in Photoshop, it reads it a little bit different. We're actually looking at the grayscale versus the RGB numbers. So they're kind of flip-flop. So normally when you would read a highlight, it would be the low number. So this would read around 2 or 3%. And when you would read a dark area, it would be the high number. If you hear me say something like that, but the number's different up here, that's where I'm getting it from. Because really when I'm making adjustments in Lightroom, I'm just doing basic adjustments. I'll really kind of refine what I do inside that program, and that's where I read it. This gives me a good idea. And for those of you who don't know how to use Photoshop, at least gives you some idea of what you're doing. The trick here is most people don't know what number things or places should be, and that's something that I'll teach you over time. So let's go ahead and just darken this area up a little bit. So I'm going to hit create new mask. We're going to go to the brush because that's just simply going to be the simplest. And remember I said this can be pretty crude. We don't have to do too much there. That looks pretty good. I'll come here and I'm just going to darken that down a little bit. And essentially what I'm trying to do is funnel our eye to this area, because in photography, your eye always goes to the white. And if you have a lot of black, that could be dominant and overpowering. So we're just kind of funneling the eye to the center of this image. So those are the basics of how to make selective adjustments. Yes, there's a whole bunch of different ways to make them, and we're going to take a look at those in other videos. The best thing that I can tell you right now is to come in here and practice, and do it before you move on to the next videos, because you have to understand how the mask works and how this process works, because it's going to carry over into Photoshop, and this is something that we're going to use over and over and over again. Well, I hope you learned a little bit about how to make selective adjustments inside of Adobe Lightroom. If you found this video helpful and could give us a thumbs up, that would be great. Leave any comments or questions down below. Don't forget to subscribe and have an absolutely wonderful day. Hey, if you're looking for something new to wear, I have a company called T-Lab Designs where I design custom t-shirts and apparel. We make stuff for adults and children.